Welcome back to Disturbing the Priest. I'm joined by John Davis of the Caveman Battle Doom band Conan. There's a new record out now, Violence Dimension, which came out in April. It's absolutely fantastic and is just such a great addition to Conan's discography. John, how's it going, man? And thanks for taking the time out.
You're very welcome. I Everything's going great. Yeah, the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day here in Merseyside.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I just want to touch on this real quick. A lot of people call Conan Caveman Battle Doom.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on this term used to describe your music?
It kind of fits, doesn't it? Uh, I'm happy with it. I think it came about the first person who ever made a Conan t-shirt put that on the back of the t-shirt, and I quickly took ownership of that. And yeah, it's cool. We don't think we've like created a new genre or nothing like that. It's just a bit of a joke, but I think it's fun.
Yeah, and well, I know it's a pretty much a meme at this point, but it is it's like so fitting. Like it describes
Yep.
the music so well, I think.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
Violence Dimension is out now, and I've read up on it a little bit and I've really enjoyed it, but I'd love to know your thoughts on it. And how do you feel like this record stands out when comparing it to the rest of the band's discography?
Um, I think it stands out really well. It's got some of the slow aspects that Monos and some parts of Horseheart Battlehammer does. And it's also got like good like metal bits as well, which we like to incorporate and keep things more interesting. We couldn't just write song like music like Krull or Sea Lord all the time. It's cool to have bits of that in there, but we like to play like festivals and stuff. So, I mean, I think it's important to try and entertain people as well. And I think with that in mind, you've gradually started incorporating more sort of more up-tempo elements to what we're doing. And, because we enjoy playing those songs live more, naturally we've started writing more like that. So there's quite a lot of that on the albums, lots of headbanging and mosh pit stuff. And yeah, really happy with it. I think it stacks up against all the other releases really nicely. It's different, but not too different, and I think it's a good addition. It complements the others well.
100%, and I agree fully. Like there's a lot of good variety in it, a lot of fast stuff, a lot of slow stuff, a lot of classic Conan on it, and like it's definitely a unique record in the band's discography for sure. And I'm just
Thank you.
curious, how long was this record in the works for, from conception to release?
Well, you wouldn't a while. Yeah, we decided we wanted to write an album along long before we actually put pen to paper, if to coin a phrase. So we were talking about writing an album, a couple of years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And then actually we got some riffs together towards the end of last year, towards the writing period. But we did a lot of the writing in the studio, which is what we tend to do. We'll get ideas for songs and riffs and a line here and there. But really, what we do is once we get in the studio, that's when we really seriously start putting it all together. We're not a band who like rehearses and knocks the songs into shape over months and years. We'll get together, write the bulk of the album, and normally record the drums at that same time, and then we'll patch it together then. And we do that more and more now. So on this album, that's exactly how we did it. We probably go back to Revengeance really, where that was an album where we, did it the old-fashioned way.
Cool. Yeah, and it's nice that you guys have a tradition, and that's kind of traditionally how like old Doom was written almost. Like even like some of the Sabbath stuff, I feel like a lot of it was kind of just like maybe not jammed in the studio, but like made with everyone there, like in the
Yeah.
studio. So it's really cool that you guys kind of continue that.
Yeah.
Um, and you touched on it a little bit, but I'd love you to like elaborate. Was there anything you did differently when approaching the songwriting process for this record that you haven't done on previous Conan albums, or is it like what you were saying, where it was all kind of the same approach?
Um, well, I'd say this album and Evidence of Immortality were both different because we used we wrote our demos using the drum machine. So, ever since I started writing music as Ungraven, I started using a drum machine in at home. So I've been writing music alongside that, and I was using Easy Drummer 3, which can create drum patterns depending on the riff you're playing. Whereas prior to Easy Drummer 3, it was the other way around. You just play along with whatever Easy Drummer could give you. Whereas now it's a bit more of a 360 kind of feedback kind of thing with it. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
basically,
that's really nice that it does
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's amazing. So we've basically just written the drums in loose form using the drum machine, and then I've just sent them back and forth to the lads, and I think we had like two or three songs sort of half written in that form. And then when we got into the studio, we just like took those riffs and fleshed them out and turned them into newer songs. But along the way, we've gone, oh, this is a cool riff. Let's make a song out of this. And then we just write a whole new song. So we go off in tangents a lot. And I think that keeps things interesting for us because I think if we wrote and recorded everything at home and then went to the studio with it being ready, I think probably every Conan album would sound the same because we just go for the path of least resistance. Whereas we're in the studio, we just kind of explode into these like weird ideas, and not weird, but we're not afraid to like say, oh yeah, that riff is cool, let's put that in. Whereas we might overthink it if we recorded it and came up with that over a period of weeks or months. So we like to just, excuse me, we just like to just we just like to like not overthink it. It kind of feels we come up with better stuff when we just get in the studio and just see what comes out. We work better under pressure. We know we got a week to write an album, then we'll do it. Whereas if we had 6 months to do it, we'd take 6 months. I'd rather write it in a week, thanks. It's a much better way of doing it.
I feel like some of the best music in general just comes out of pressure, because I feel like a lot of bands today, they're like, all right, we'll take 8 months to record this.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. Look at for a case in point, for example, Love 'Em or Hate Them, the song, I think it's Pantera did a song called The Badge, and I think that's a cover of a Black Flag song, I hope I'm correct.
I think so.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I imagine that song didn't take weeks and months for them to come up with and write and rehearse and stress over. And that for me is one of my favorite Pantera tracks, even though they didn't write it. Nirvana, for example, one of my favorite Nirvana songs is Curmudgeon or I Hate Myself and I Want to Die. And they're like throwaway tracks that didn't make it onto Nevermind or In Utero. And they're some of my favorite Nirvana songs. And I think if we write all of our music a bit like what they may have written those songs, then I think that might mean then that we get an album full of songs that people think are cool, not formulaic, and similar but different enough than what we've written already. And it's a bit of a risk doing that because you could book studio time and come out of it with shit.
Yeah.
But we're very lucky because we've got Chris Fielding in there. So Chris can take an idea, and even if it's a stupid idea, and he can say, "Well, what about this? What about that?" And very quickly, because of his experience being in Conan in the past, he can help us write. He can help us write the songs as we go along, and that's really useful. I don't think you get that with most producers.
For sure, man. And some of my favorite stuff, like new wave of British heavy metal, like you hear stories, it was like recorded in like 24 hours, 2 days. And it's like some of my
Yeah,
favorite records, so 100%. I agree.
yeah.
I read somewhere that Voivod was a big influence on this new release. To what extent did it influence like the music on the new
Not
record?
I wouldn't say it influenced the music in a whole lot, honestly. Although Dimension Hatros is an amazing album, but I remember listening to that album and thinking, "Oh, I'm going to use the word dimension in the album title
Oh,
for this one." That's it. I don't know whether I don't know. I hope I didn't tell someone else that the music was a big influence in it. But even though they are an absolutely insanely good band, they didn't influence this album particularly. However, I was listening to Dimension Hatros a lot around that time, and it's like a really amazing album. So maybe some of that rubbed off on this one, but I don't think you could honestly say there's an obvious link there. But just the use of the word dimension, and I thought of the name Violence Dimension just as I was listening to Dimension Hatros, and I thought, oh, they don't mind me using this word. So
that is a great name. Yeah.
yeah, it's a cool name for an album, and I thought, well, I'm gonna have a bit of that. So I did.
Yeah, and I feel like lyrically there are some similarities too, like a lot of lyrics about war. And
Yeah,
even though Voivod's a lot much more futuristic,
yeah.
I feel like it is up your alley. As I know you're a fan of like movies like Crawl and stuff.
Oh
And
yeah,
I think
totally.
that's just the thrash version of those like 80s movies.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And anything that is distilled through that kind of lens for me is always going to be good music. If you're writing a song about Krull, you simply wouldn't bother unless it was going to be awesome. So I'm not saying that our song Krull is awesome, but to me, it's like a super cool song just because of how simple it is. And um, Voivod are a great band. I was actually introduced to that album by Nathan Carson, our US booker, and I was
Oh,
staying. Yeah, I was staying with him for a few days when I was rehearsing in Portland, and he put me onto it. So yeah, it's an amazing album. I'll probably listen to that now when I'm driving down to Heathrow.
hell yeah. Yeah. Great record and band, man.
Yeah.
Now I do definitely want to touch upon again, like kind of the recording process for the new album. Now, was there any new gear you experimented with for the recording, or did you rely on like old gear?
Uh, in a lot of ways, that my setup was more simple this time round. I used my fuzz throne distortion pedal exclusively. I didn't use any other distortion pedals on this album, which is unusual. On the last album, I used the fuzz throne. I had an old Sovtech green muff, and I think I had I forget the other one now. Maybe there was a third one. I don't remember. But on this album, I just used the fuzz throne. And amplifiers wise, I used Chris's old Matam GTL, which had been out of action for several years. And that's the amplifier that I'd used on most Conan releases. So I was pleased to get that back. And for the first time, I used my live rig in the studio, which is like a Valve preamp into a solid state power amplifier. And I was really happy with how that sounded. I think that adds a lot to the record to the tone on the album. Actually, people may not notice, but to me, I can hear it, and I think it gave us a bit more of a thrashier kind of sound on guitar. And I think that a lot of that is down to the solid state power amplifier on that because it reminded me a little bit of like older sort of Sepultura or Metallica kind of guitar tone. That's blended in there with the fuzz of the Matt amp, which is super fat. But I think the two of them complement each other quite well. But in terms of other gear, no, nothing crazy. The song Vortexian, I guess quite interesting. We That's just guitar and bass feedback really. There's nothing to it. But halfway through that song, we change key, but we change key on exactly 6 minutes and 66 seconds.
That's
Most
awesome.
people most people wouldn't know that. And there's only two notes in the whole song, and we change on 666. And then
Was that
when you start,
intentional?
yeah, that it was a 12-minute song, change key on 666. That was
Awesome.
that was the exact that was our remix going in. Um and you can hear sort of like noise and sort of weird stuff going on after a little while. And that's actually a trailer for the movie Conquest by Lucio Fulci, played on the speaker of my iPhone, but held up to the pickup on my guitar.
That's awesome.
And then that's run through all of the guitar rig, with all the pedals on, so you can hear delay and phaser in there. Um, Yeah, yeah, I use that like a high band flanger on that album as well, which some of the feedback you can hear is that flanger sort of feeding back with the input volume control on my Boss RE201 Space Echo pedal. And I if you increase if you increase the input volume, you can get like really good saturated feedback, which is exactly what I did on. So some of those songs where you can hear like the swelling noise like halfway through the title track, there's like like uh oscillating sort of feedback that just kind of soars. I think it's after when it comes in the second time heavy, and that is just like delay pedal, oscillation, flanger going into it, and the wah pedal cocked a little bit. So yeah, just we experimented quite a lot on blending effects, but they were all effects that I've been using for a while. There's not a great deal that's brand new on there.
Yeah, well, I love the tone on Violence Dimension. It's so great, and it's really cool to hear how you got that, and like even like
Yeah.
putting up the sound of the trailer up to the pickups and everything.
Yep.
Really cool experimentation there. Now you've talked about
Mhm.
production a little bit, but I'm just curious, how hands-on are you personally with the band's production?
Not at all. Not at all.
Completely hands off.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we go to the studio. I'll play something if it sounds cool. I'm like, Johnny, play along to this. So Johnny will play some drums. Chris normally is already recording, so normally it's just rolling. And if we capture something cool, we're like, oh yeah, let's get 8 bars of that, and then we'll do it, and then we'll do 8 bars of something else, and then we'll just sort of inch our way through the songs. Some of the songs came together in their entirety just after one or two takes. Some of them took a bit more effort, but basically, I don't get involved in the production. Chris is infinitely more skilled and experienced than me, so I just trust him to make it sound cool. All I've got to do is write something cool first place. So it's quite easy, really.
Do you remember any of the tracks that took one take?
Yeah, Warp Sword.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the same as Ritual of Anonymity on the last album. Um, the same as Volt Thrower came together super quick on its own.
cool.
Pain Cantation. You know, a lot of the songs come together after. I mean, we do like a take and then we record it. It's not like it's like that's But you can hear on the album, I think Johnny saying that one, or yeah, that one will do, or something like that after Warp Sword, because we'd written it in one take, and obviously we had to record it once or twice to get it right.
Yeah, now with Warp Sword, what inspired you to put out such a short song? Did it start long and you whittled it down? What's the background of that track?
No, we just figured it'd be cool to do another short song because people found Pain Cantation interesting, so we just figured we'd do another short one. And it just came out that way. Honestly, it wasn't it wasn't done. Um, it wasn't shortened down or anything like that. It was meant to just be a really fast song that ended as soon as it begun, kind of idea. Um, so we did that. I mean, whether we'll play it live or not is another matter. Depends on the crowd. But yeah, just we always like to do a couple of short songs because the album is a long album. It's nice to put something short on there as well.
Yeah, it's like grind sludge or something,
Yeah,
really cool.
I mean, it's
Uh
tuned super low but played really fast. It's weird, but it works.
yeah, it works really well. And it's just like, again, adds to the variety of the record and is just
Yeah,
really nice. Like, you don't feel the length of the record for
yep,
sure.
yep.
Now, there's a lot going on in the world, as we know, and I love the band's themes and messages on violence and everything. Was there anything from the modern day that you pulled from for like direct inspiration on any of the tracks?
Nothing specific, no. Um, the last album we was I wrote the lyrics, sat in front of my computer watching the news as Ukraine was like Russia were on the border and they were about to invade. So that wasn't about that war, but it was about warfare specifically, about the feelings that one might experience as you go through that era. But For this album, no, nothing in particular. Although I just got to thinking about just how violent the world is in general. I just thought I'd write songs and make an album sort of just about that loosely. And also I make a lot of reference to death being natural and just part of life and not to worry about it. And I think a lot of that is trying to soothe my younger self and also my kids. Around the time when I was writing the album, one of my children was asking about like what happens when you die and stuff like that. So I thought I'd just kind of put that into words, like, don't, life itself is killing you. Don't stress about it. Time will kill. Um, Death is life. Like it's just trying to take away, and you take away the power a little bit and a little bit of the worry from being worried about dying and death and mortality and stuff like that. And I dealt with that in the lyrics, which was really handy. It was nice. It felt good.
Now, Heavy
Thank you.
Psych Sounds, I believe you've been working with as of
Yep.
recently. What's it like working with this label, and how did you get in touch with them?
It's been great. We started talking towards the end of 2021, just as lockdown was starting to get a bit easier, and they made us an offer. And we had been talking to a few of the labels who like weren't like exactly breaking down the walls to get an offer signed. So we thought, well, you know what, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and we just decided to take them up on the offer, and we didn't really look back. Just got it signed, and then we were away then. But Gabe and the rest of the team are really cool guys. A DIY ethic, but they've built a good sized label off the back of it. So we're happy to be a part of it.
It's a great label for sure, and it's
Oh yeah,
really awesome to see you guys on it with a lot of great doom bands as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, it's cool to see David Riley in the band now, since Fudge Tunnel was a big inspiration on you. What was that recruiting process like that got David into the band?
Uh, Very easy. I started talking to Dave in like 2018, 19 about working with Ungraven because I was thinking of making Ungraven like bass, guitar, and drum machine. But then he joined Ungraven, we recorded, and it started to sound a bit too much like Conan. So around about then, Chris couldn't do a festival or two. So I said to Dave, "Well, do you fancy playing a festival or two with Conan?" And he was like, "Yeah, okay." So he did, and that was back in 2018, I think. And then he played a few more, and then he did a tour with us, and blah blah blah. And then Chris, 2022 or three actually. He's like, he's got other commitments, and he had to step away. So we were like, all right, well, the easy choice really was to bring Dave in because he played so often with us anyway. Like, who else would we pick? So he, Dave came on board straight away, and we haven't looked back. It's been great, just like Chris, very easy to get along with, great musician, and a great addition to the band. We have really good camaraderie, and we enjoy what we do, and that's because we all get along.
He's a great addition to the band for sure.
Oh yeah,
And you spoke about the Ungraven material, and I think that's really funny that some of the Ungraven stuff originally sounded too much like Conan. Did
yeah.
any of that stuff make it to Violence Dimension? That
No,
sounded too much like Conan, or is it just shelved?
no. The Ungraven stuff that I wrote that sounded like Conan has been released as Ungraven. But I didn't want to keep writing music for Ungraven if it was going to sound just like Conan. So I changed the vibe for Ungraven. It's more like a drone synth kind of horror soundtrack type of thing now, which we're going to move forward with. Um, but yeah, I didn't want it to sound like it was getting to sound. It was too similar.
And I'll be honest, I feel like for Texion has a bit of Ungraven in it. It's definitely a
Totally.
Conan track, but I
Yeah.
can totally hear Ungraven in
Oh
that
yeah.
song.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah. All
yeah.
it's missing is Dave's synths.
Yeah, yeah. So is there a reason why it sounds so similar? Was that originally going to be an Ungraven track, or because
No,
these albums came out pretty close to each other?
they did. Yeah, the label wanted to put them out closer, I guess, so Ungraver could piggyback off Conan's press, which is understandable.
We are
It sounds
talking
like
about it. Yeah.
yeah, it's normal, it's exactly it's work, doesn't it? So I mean, it sounds like Ungraven because, very simply put, Ungraven is well that album that's just come out now, Horrors Made Homes, The Sunken Cheeks, is an improvised album, and all I did was improvise guitar and then record it with Chris in Foles studio, and then sent it off to Dave, and Dave Perry wrote what he wrote over the top of it. So everything on that Ungraven album that's interesting is from Dave Perry. So that the track Vortexian is basically that, but without Dave. And it's without Dave Perry, I mean, not Dave Riley, who did play bass on that track.
Right.
So um, yeah, it sounds just like Ungraven simply because it's made of the one of the key ingredients.
Yeah, for sure. Was that improvised as well, that song?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we just said let's hit the first note and just play that
Nice.
first fret on the bottom string, and then change it to I think six on 666.
Awesome. Awesome.
So I mean, it's stupid. We were going to put like we were just gonna we were just going to put a bonus track on the song. It's
It's very doom metal.
yeah, exactly. We were just like fuck it, let's just do you know who cares? Let's just put one 12-minute song on there. It'll be funny. So
Yeah.
people quite like it.
It's a great bridge to Ungraven, honestly.
Mm.
Like as
Yeah, yeah,
like the next record to listen to. It's a
yeah.
really great transition track between the records, I find. Now, speaking of doom metal, I'd love to know personally, like what was your first exposure to doom metal besides Black Sabbath?
Um, Probably Zoroaster, Slamatics. A lot of people might call them sludge, I guess. Well, that was my first. They were my first like bands, like adjacent to this kind of music that Conan writes now.
Right. Yeah.
And really big influences on us. So yeah, I probably heard
Cool.
Trouble as well back then too. I don't think Trouble have really such an influence on us, but Slamatics and Zoroaster definitely do.
Yeah, I can totally hear that for sure. And I was always curious because Conan, it's, you guys are in that doom circle, but you have such a unique sound out of it. So I was always curious. And I know you've also talked about Nirvana being a major influence to you, which
Mhm.
is funny because a lot of the people like in the genre, aren't fans of that band at all. Where I find
Yeah.
Nevermind and a lot of their records to be really good, a lot of good like
Oh yeah.
riff writing and
Yep.
everything. And you also have that Melvins connection as well, for
Yeah.
sure, which I
If any,
totally
if
see.
any, if any of our fans don't like the Melvins, then that makes me sad. Oh, sorry, yeah, Nirvana,
I
that makes me sad. I'm
Yeah,
a huge fan of Nirvana. I mean, I used to watch the videotape over and over again of Live Tonight sold out. Like the video of them on tour and little clip montage. That's what made me want to play. I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. And I remember when I was 18 or 19, I was learning how to play guitar, and I was in a leather jacket shop in Manchester, and in fact, it was my 18th birthday present off my granddad. He'd saved up £100 in pennies and 5 pence pieces, and so I took that to Manchester to buy a leather jacket. And the man in the shop was asking me, we must have got talking about guitar for some reason, and he showed me how to play a power chord, like the shape of it with your fingers, and I was like,
right.
oh my god. So from that, that's when I really started thinking, well, I'm not going to try and play like Scotty and Anthrax anymore. I'm going to play like Kurt Cobain. So all the songs I was writing then, from that point forward, for a while, was you know grungy style, that kind of music. So the Nirvana were a massive influence on not just maybe not Conan's current vibe, but definitely on me deciding I wanted to play in the first place, which that's a huge thing to have an influence on, I think.
For sure, man. And that's such a crazy place to learn a power chord
Oh, I know.
in a
I know.
that's very
Yeah.
metal. Yeah.
And it was exactly 30 years ago. So I vaguely, I can't picture the guy's face, but I can sort of kind of picture the shop, And I can remember him writing it down. And I think the piece of paper he wrote it on was like a brown bit of notepad. And I'm sure he folded it up and I put it in my pocket. Obviously, I've lost it now, but it was like, that was an important moment that for what it's worth.
For sure, man. And yeah, it's cool to see what that projected you into with Conan.
Yeah.
And I think for Nirvana, like I think the issue a lot of people do have is just like what grunge did to like thrash and all these genres. It did change the landscape permanently. But as someone who was born after that record, I do really love Nevermind and
Yeah.
all their stuff.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you, because I know with Stoner Doom, marijuana plays a massive part in these bands and the audience and stuff. What role does this drug play in your life and the band? I know, like Electric Wizard, for example, use it when it comes to the writing process, but what role does it have in your life?
Um, I run a mile from it now. It contributed to some mild mental health problems when I was younger. And eventually I became allergic to it. So there was a physical reaction eventually. But I definitely believe that the anxiety and poor mental health that I had in my late teens through to my early 30s was at least in part down to not coping well with smoking too much weed. It wasn't for me. So lots of people do great with, getting stoned all the time, and I miss it terribly. But the effects that it had upon me, so I wouldn't go back to it at all. So it doesn't have any, and same with the other two as well. We're not a band who, um, we're not like a stoner band at all. So a lot of people are surprised by that. But I used to get stoned. Probably the last album that I wrote, being in a period of getting stoned during the writing process, was probably Blood Eagle.
Okay.
And then every album since then, I don't think anyone in the band smoked weed.
Well,
So
it,
yeah,
it still sounds great, and I feel like it like I wasn't sure with Conan because it really seems removed from that.
yeah,
But yeah, man, like I've been off it for a few months now, and like I totally know what you mean. And I have a few friends who don't, but I do miss it myself.
yeah,
It is nice, but yeah, you have to in moderation,
yeah.
whatever's best.
When I smoked weed, I didn't give a fuck about anything. Like I didn't give a I I cared about people, but was able to convince myself to do shit that wasn't cool because I was getting stoned all the time, and it didn't seem like it mattered. And as soon as I stopped smoking weed, I was like, oh my god, what a cunt. So I just stopped and much happier now.
Cool. Well, the music you guys are putting out is absolutely fantastic. And before I wrap it up, I just got to ask, what the fuck is the tuning for the new record?
It's a dropped F.
Drop F?
Yeah, it's the same we've always had. I think our first ever demos, the Battle in the Swamp demos, were drop A, but it's yeah, this one's drop F, and everything's been drop F.
Damn.
FCF A sharp DG, which is,
There it is.
yeah, in case I forget.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time while you're in transit right
Yeah, you're
now.
welcome. No worries. I've not
Now,
started yet.
yeah, yeah. Well, you were about to be in transit.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I just kind of want to give you the floor here. If there's anything we missed, what's the future of you and your music looking like right now?
Well, we've got tours towards the end of the year, US, Europe, and UK. And aside from that, I've developed a setlist management platform called droptune.io. So droptune.io, and helps musicians such as myself to create set lists, save them, refer back to them, analyze statistics relating to them, and to engage with fans around them. So if you're able to plug that in any way, it's a droptune.io. That would be cool. But apart from that, Conan are busy, and we will see what next year brings once we got this touring done.
Awesome. I'll have Conan's website and your new project in the description. That's really awesome, and that's something I'd love to really look at because statistics with set lists and stuff in terms of like new tracks debuted and everything is
Yeah,
really cool to track.
yeah, man.
Now, what's the best way for people to stay updated with everything you and Conan and Ungraven?
Instagram is best.
Instagram.
Yeah, at Hail Conan is the link. So at sign and Hail Conan, you can get us on Instagram and Facebook with that.
Awesome. Well, John, again, thank you so much for taking the time out. Really appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, cheers, Brandon. Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care. I'm Brandon, and this has been Disturbing the Priest.
It's death! I've just seen death!